Welcome back to A Writer's Mind. I'm DelSheree Gladden, and this is my effort to encourage myself to write more and get on a writing schedule, so I am not continually wanting to get back to writing but not actually doing it. So hopefully I can keep this up. This is week 2. I'm starting on Monday after having taken yesterday off to get some other stuff done, and I'm on chapter 3. I got about 910 words written, and this was a little bit more productive. I was a little more focused, set some time aside when I had some quiet to really get this done, and that seemed to help because I did get a little bit higher word count today than I was expecting to. Some of the things that I'm noticing, kind of recap from last week, I was setting the stage, introducing some of the characters that are going to come into play in this overall story. With this Karmic Investigations, which I still haven't come up with a title for. But I had introduced in chapter 2 a character named Ethan, who just happens to be in the class with our main character, who is inhabiting the body of the person that she's investigating. So Beatrix is the main character, investigating Sage, and trying to determine whether Sage had something to do with the disappearance and possibly the death, that's still undetermined, of Arya Proust. So Ethan, I'd kind of just thrown him in. I needed an excuse for her to make up some reason that she sat in the wrong chair when she came into class and, pretended she needed to borrow his charger. And I was kind of just going to leave it at that and maybe just have him pop up occasionally. But as I started writing and was getting through that chapter, I actually thought he might be fairly useful. He'd mentioned at the first encounter with Beatrix that his sister was on Student Senate and had been responsible for putting up the posters all around the school about Arya being missing. And so I actually wanted to bring him in a little bit more, and I think I'm going to have him be more consistent of a character, because as Beatrix is leaving, she, posing as Sage, thinks that he might be someone who can introduce her or help facilitate her meeting his sister, that she can maybe get some more information about this girl Arya and the fact that she kind of has a connection with the family. The family's the one who asked her and the other Student Senate members to put up the posters. So I have her give him her number and say, hey, can you have your sister get in contact with me? I want to help. When, she's really doing this to try to make contact with the family. And that was originally my plan for the next step of this story. And I wasn't quite done with the chapter. It was too short. So I have her go through the day a little bit more and get to lunch, where she interacts with Rhys again. And, actually, no, I'm getting it mixed up. So see if I can even remember what I'm doing. This is the problem with not planning things out ahead of time. So as she's leaving that first hour, her friends are kind of like, why are you talking to that Ethan kid? And one of the friends makes a comment that she doesn't understand why the police aren't looking at Arya's brother. And this was kind of one of those things that just popped into my head at the moment, and I thought, I'm going to go with it and see if I can take it somewhere. So she goes to lunch later and kind of casually brings up this comment, kind of, girl gossip during lunch of like, hey, do you remember 2 years ago when Arya's brother got accused of attacking this girl after they went to prom together? And she kind of does a quick search to see if she can come up with anything before lunch, but there's nothing in the newspaper. She's not seeing any, arrest records or things like that. So she's kind of just taking it as, well, maybe this is just stupid rumors that got spread, and maybe that's why it hasn't come back up again. But Rhys mentions that she does remember it happening and that she knew the girl it was happening to, or that it happened to, and that girl didn't strike her as someone who would, make stuff up or say things intentionally to hurt someone else's reputation. So I kind of took a little bit of a just random detour there, and I think I'm going to follow it and see where it happens. Other than that, I'm kind of debating on how many more characters I want to introduce. Some of them are just these tertiary characters that are popping in for that one scene and we may never see them again. I think I'm going to keep Ethan around a little bit more. But aside from not wanting to have to come up with a bunch more names, I also don't want to introduce too many people right off the bat and then have it, get confusing or too much for the reader to try to keep track of. So I'm keeping that in mind as I go forward. I'm also debating, like I said, this brother angle kind of came out of nowhere, and I'm just playing with it and see where it goes. As I stopped writing at this point, kind of hit that hour and needed to focus on a few other things, I'm undetermined on whether these rumors are going to be true or whether it was some sort of misunderstanding and he's kind of just been laying low ever since, trying to stay off people's radar. I'm kind of in between right now. I don't want this to be like oh, poor guy, this girl made false claims about him and it was all just this terrible misunderstanding, because that just seems like kind of a cop-out, and it's something I bring up. I think it would feel like to readers like, oh, I brought this thing up that was going to be this complexity and this interesting thing, and then it was resolved too quickly, which would make it not very interesting. So I'm kind of playing with it in my head to see where I want to go with this and how I'm going to interpret those rumors in the form of who this character, I gave him the name Leon, who Leon is going to be. And that decision may or may not play back into Arya's actual disappearance. That I still haven't come to any conclusions on that either. He may be kind of a side tangent that pulls Beatrix away from the main part of the investigation to try to figure out whether this is relevant or not, or it may in some way be tangled up with everything else that happens. I am leaning toward he's not going to be the one who has done something to his sister. But, who knows? It may change over time as I just see how his character develops and what I'm going to do with him. But that's kind of where I stopped at this point for Monday. And I'm going to pick up that chapter and see if I can get it wrapped up tomorrow. All right, so back for Tuesday. I did manage to get a second day in a row, which was nice. It was really, really tempting to just be like, I'll do it tomorrow. But as I think about that and trying to get in the 5 days, and it's like, okay, if I don't do it tomorrow, then I'm writing at least one weekend day, which is fine. I'm not opposed to that. Weekends can be really great times for writing, but I want to try to make sure that I'm saving my time to be with my family or to go hiking or biking or whatever for those times that I know everyone else is available to do that. So I'm trying to keep my scheduled writing time to the weekdays, and then bonus if I get time on the weekend to write. That's awesome. But I want to try to get in those 5 days. So even though I didn't get to it until later in the evening, still managed to get in some writing. I got 895 words. I finished off chapter 3. So that was nice. Kind of feel like I'm making progress and starting to have some sort of a dent in this project, even though I still feel like I'm really in that introductory phase and want to get things going a little bit more. As I'm hashing things out, it's just, I think, going to take as long as it takes for me to figure out where I'm at in the world and how to put the characters in. So I worked on finishing off the section that I had started yesterday, and that kind of left me at about... So I was at a point in a chapter where the chapter was about 900 words, which wasn't long enough for that to be a chapter, but I was debating on how I was going to take the rest of the chapter and how many words that was going to take, and if I was going to end up with this gigantic chapter or a really short chapter and then a medium length chapter. And I like having a variety of length when it comes to chapters, and even down to sentences and paragraphs. If everything's the same, it gets a little monotonous. So I'm not opposed to some shorter, some longer, but 900 words just felt too short for a chapter. It didn't feel complete when I read back through it. So I decided to just do a scene change, continue on, and get that next portion in, even if it made it a little bit longer than some of the other chapters, which it did. But I think it worked out better than trying to split it into two awkwardly linked chapters instead. So one of the things that I was really struggling with on this one, it was more discussion about the brother, Leon, and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with him. So I have Beatrix kind of do some just real quick social media stalking and kind of figure out where he's at in his life and if there's anything suspicious or out of ordinary on his social media posting. Because even though you would think people would be smart enough to not put stupid things on social media, we all know people do it all the time. So she takes a look at that. She mostly just finds kind of a lot of like at a party with friends, that sort of thing, out doing this or that or the other. But she also sees a few posts of where he's working at kind of like a local chain Mexican food place. And so she wants to kind of contrive this way to observe him, but make it seem natural. So she invites Riss to go grab some tacos with her after school, just kind of an after-school snack. And so they go. Beatrix pretends this is just a random thought, and she's waiting for Leon to make some sort of appearance. And when he does, acts surprised and points it out to Riss, like, oh my gosh, did you know he worked here? And Riss, the way I'm kind of writing her and the way her character tends to be developing is she's a little bit excitable. She reacts a little bit more, especially compared to Beatrix, who's very intentional, very calculating. She's literally, pretending to be someone else while she's doing this investigation. So she has to be very aware of every look and expression and all of her body language and stuff like that. Where Riss is a little bit more just teenage girl. She's going to react, and she's not thinking all the time about how everything she does is going to be analyzed by someone else. So she kind of gets a little creeped out because they had just been talking about her. So to her, it seems like this really weird coincidence that then they run into him. And she's been thinking about, this alleged attack that he's perpetrated on his prom date several years in the past. So she wants to go home, and Beatrix is fine with that because she doesn't really want to draw Riss into the investigation. She was kind of just using her as cover to look less strange going out and eating tacos by herself. So she kind of keeps an eye on him as they're leaving, and she's deciding what she wants to do next because he seems perfectly normal while in the store. So she's kind of like, maybe this was just nothing, but she wants to make sure. And she hasn't heard a connection, or she hasn't gotten any texts or made any connection with Ethan's sister, Sarah, who she's hoping will get her an in with the family or let her help out with whatever thing they do next. So since she hasn't heard back from Sarah, she's like, well, might as well kind of keep an eye on Leon and see what he does next. So she takes Riss home and kind of makes this plan. She's going to come back at the end of his shift and then just kind of observe him and see what he does next. So that's where I ended that chapter. And I'm still kind of tossing around some ideas in my head about what I'm going to do with Leon and what direction I'm going to take him. So I'll keep thinking about that and see where the next chapter takes me. All right, so back for Wednesday's progress report on my writing adventure. Tonight, where I was hauling rocks, and it took most of the day, and I was so tired. I was like so dirty by the end of the day too from all the dust. Taking my shoes and socks off to go shower, and there's just like my legs are a completely different color. And my legs and my shoulders and everything kind of hurts right now. So it was another one of those nights where it was like, I'll just write on the weekend. I'm too tired. I can't focus. But I really wanted to just get stuff done and not have to worry about trying to fit it in over the weekend. So I did get some more writing done, and not as much. I struggled to focus on this one because I didn't want to get up and go into my room or even go up to the kitchen or the dining room table to write. I just stayed on the couch, and I'd been watching something. I don't remember what we were watching at this point. I was watching a show with my daughter, and just was kind of like, I'm just going to sit here, and if I can write, I'll get something down on the page. If not, maybe this will just be a wash for today. So I did end up getting 701 words written, but it took me like 2 hours to make it that far. And I just was not focusing very well, especially when I was first trying to get started. I reread the last portion a little bit, and then I got like a couple lines and sat there and stared at it and reread again and got distracted by what was playing on the TV and the dogs and everything else. So I knew as I was contemplating not getting up and finding a quiet space to read or to write, this was not going to be the most effective way to get my writing in. But like I said, I was really tired, and I just didn't really have the energy to take those extra steps. So that's on me. I knew it wasn't going to be a great writing session, but I stuck with it and tried to at least get something done. What I did get through, I kind of finished off that chapter with her starting to follow Leon afterward. And still, as I was I think this is part of the reason that I was really struggling to focus and get any words going at the beginning, because I still just had no real sense of where I wanted to take Leon's character and how I was going to use him in this story. So I was really just kind of like writing a few sentences, thinking about it some more, going back and changing those sentences, writing a couple more, deleting them. I probably spent a good 20-25 minutes just on like 2 paragraphs because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do in that chapter. And I was kind of just running scenarios through my head of, is there going to be some sort of explanation that's going to exonerate him from the earlier incident that there are the rumors about? Is it going to be a little bit of he had a part, she had a part, things just got out of hand, and he didn't, defend himself or against the rumors and just kind of like laid quiet about it? But then I couldn't really completely reconcile that with why would this not have followed up on anything? Why would the police not have gotten involved? If she was telling other people at school, why wouldn't she tell the police? So I was just running into a lot of like mental conflicts on trying to square away this subplot and figure out what I wanted to do with it and what its importance is to the overall story. And I don't think I completely figured that out, but I did decide that I'm going to lean more toward things aren't quite as they seemed according to the rumors, because, as rumors go, it's like playing telephone. It gets changed throughout. And by the time Beatrix is hearing about this, it's 2 years later. And it's not going to be completely what she's heard. But I'm still playing with the idea of why this didn't get pursued as a police investigation. I have some ideas on that, but I haven't solidified them yet. I think there's going to be maybe some family connections that are going to influence that, some pressures involved on certain parties. But I'm kind of still thinking about that as I go through. But I did start kind of putting in these indicators of Leon's personality that he can come off very charming, very respectable. He plays the good, solid kid that nobody would ever suspect of doing anything. Like, he plays that really well. But when he's out of the sight of people who can, report back to his parents or spread rumors or things like that, he's going to have some other personality traits that come out. And so as I was finishing up today, I think I was starting to get a little bit better sense of who Leon is and where I need to take him and how I'm going to involve him in the overall story of his missing sister. And I think it's going to be a complex entanglement. So, which is always kind of fun when just a random thought really comes to play kind of an important part. But I think I do want to bring it back with my original plan of this Ethan character and him connecting Beatrix with his sister Sarah. So Sarah will hopefully, I can bring it all together in a way that makes sense. Sarah will still manage to connect Beatrix with Aria's parents while she's also investigating Leon in this side investigation that she's conducting to figure out whether she needs to be investigating him or not. And those two are going to intersect a little bit at some point to give her a clearer picture of why the events of 2 years ago were just swept under the rug, basically. So, like I said, I still haven't completely figured out all of those details, but the pieces and parts are starting to float around in my head, and hopefully they'll fit together without having to make too many major changes, because that's still something I'm trying to avoid doing if I kind of come up with a new path or a new idea, rather than immediately going back and rewriting or reworking things. Just kind of making either a mental or a physical note to work that out later, but trying to just keep the momentum of writing going, so I'm not spending all of my writing time doing revisions or rewriting. I anticipate, again, plenty of changes when I come back to these early chapters later, once I figure things out and I need to go back and actually put in some of those hints and clues and nudges and all of that. Because I don't know what those are supposed to be yet, so it's hard to put them in. So, finished with that section. I'm going to hopefully get my writing wrapped up by Friday. We'll see how that goes. I also really, really want to be done with rocks, so we'll see how long that takes for me to do that tomorrow, and how much writing time I can fit in. It is now Friday, so clearly yesterday I did not get any writing done. I was so completely and utterly exhausted after spending all day hauling rocks into my backyard. I couldn't even hazard a guess at how many wheelbarrow loads it took. On Wednesday, I had ordered 9 cubic yards of rocks total. I did about 4 yards on whatever day that was, Wednesday, and then the remaining 5 yards yesterday. So yeah, that was a lot of rocks. I never want to move another single rock again ever in my life if I can help it. But my backyard does look nice, and the dogs seem happy about it. And hopefully they will stay a little bit cleaner and not be constantly rolling in dirt and then bringing it into the house and shaking it off all over the place. So it feels really good to have that done, because now I can focus on writing and book stuff and radio show stuff and podcast stuff and all of the things that are on my list that I would really, really like to get done this summer. So that was kind of my big other task that was taking up a lot of time and thought and preparation, and now it is done, which I'm super excited about. And I'm looking forward to actually using my yard a little bit more this summer. I set up a nice little fire pit with the chairs, so maybe we'll do some marshmallow roasting or sit out there and read. That would be nice too. So, on to the writing. So, today I finished up chapter 4 with Leon, and then I started in on chapter 5. I only got like half a page on number 5, just because I just wanted to kind of finish out the hour and get started on some things. I kind of had an idea of how I wanted the next chapter to start, and I didn't want to forget it. So I just wrote that first kind of half page of chapter 5 to get that idea down so I can kind of start next time, which I've actually heard is a good way to stop your writing, that ending at like a scene break or the end of a chapter, you're kind of wrapping up your idea for the day, and that can make it harder to get back into writing when you sit down next. And I guess sometimes that's happened to me just because like I've run out of time or needed to switch or got called away or whatever. But typically I like to finish a scene, finish a chapter, and like it feels like I've completed that session when I'm writing. So it'll be kind of interesting to see tomorrow when I sit down, because even though I was hoping to avoid my scheduled writing time falling onto a weekend today, I'm going to have to do that tomorrow to hit my 5 days, which is fine. I'm going to try to get a bike ride in first thing in the morning because it's been pretty hot the last couple of days, so I need to do it really early so I don't die of heat stroke or something. So I'll do the bike ride first thing in the morning, take the dogs for a walk, all that good stuff, and then get some writing done early in the day is my plan. and then finish up some other stuff for my other show that I do for the college, where I interview authors. I need to get some promotional stuff done for that. So that is my plan. But today, I did sit out on the couch because I'm still really pretty sore from all the rock business. So I needed a comfortable place to sit today. So I did sit on the couch to write, but I turned off the TV. The dogs were pretty tired, so there were minimal interruptions then. And I actually was able to get a significant amount of writing done. This is the most I've been able to write in one sitting since I started this project, which felt really good. But I managed to get 1,715 words written, which, I can't even think of the last time I wrote that many words. in just about an hour, too. I was able to really just focus in after the first maybe about 10 minutes. I started out kind of like I did the last time, getting a sentence down, thinking about it for a while, making some changes, getting another sentence down. And again, it was the same thing of like, I wasn't totally sure where I was going to go with Leon. I was still thinking over my approach to him. And even though I feel like it should make it easier to have a plan in place, trying to sit there and plan the rest of the chapter was really hanging me up and causing me to have a hard time. So I kind of just gave up on that. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to start writing. I was at the point where she's come back to the taco place and she's kind of parked off to the side waiting for Leon to come out. And I have him come out with another young lady who works there, and they get into the same car. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the situation when I started writing this section, kind of the last half of chapter 4. So I just started writing, and I was going to let the drive tell me where they were going and just follow them along, which is what I did. And she follows, observes them. It's very non-eventful. It just seems very normal. One coworker giving another coworker a ride home. And Beatrix starts to second guess herself. She's like, okay, maybe these were just crazy rumors. It was 2 years ago. Nothing's come up since then. He doesn't have, a long rap sheet or obvious problems. So she almost lets it go at that. And it's just like, it's like 9 o'clock by that point. She's kind of, I haven't totally decided how her parents are going to react or what their rules are on her being out. Because earlier I had set it up that this was a night that her mom was working a long shift at the hospital. So the kids were responsible for making dinner and taking care of all of that before her mom got home, making dinner for the dad. So I'm still keeping that in the back of my mind. I don't know if she's going to get in trouble for being out or if they're going to question her how tight their control is. I'm anticipating there's going to be some sort of issue with one or the other of the parents, but I haven't decided what yet. I'm going to let that simmer in the back of my mind. But anyway, so she almost gives up and decides to go home and just call it a night and maybe call it on investigating Leon altogether. But there's still just that little bit of suspicion hanging on that she can't let go of quite enough. And so she's like, you know what? I'm just going to follow him back. And if he just goes back home, then, maybe that's it. She'll focus on getting in contact with Sarah and getting in with the parents to get a little bit more information from them. And it seems like that's what is going on. That he's just driving back home, kind of going the same route they went. And then suddenly he takes a detour. And as soon as that came into my mind that he's going to make a turn that she wasn't expecting, it cemented in my mind this was not going to be, to stop and get, ice cream on the way home. And she follows him into a neighborhood, like a fairly nice, like well-off neighborhood. And I wanted it to be kind of out of the way, secluded. And the area that came to my mind was, it took me back to a time back when myself and my ex-husband, we were still practicing in the Mormon faith. And we were trying to find our way to the temple in Denver, which is actually in Littleton, not Denver, but it's called the Denver Temple. And this was at a time when we did not have cell phones with maps. Like, we didn't have smartphones. This would have been when we were still living in Colorado Springs. So 2005, probably right around 2005. And I don't think we even had cell phones at that point. We had just moved there, really stretching to make ends meet and everything. So we had kind of like, you know what, we don't need expensive cell phones right now. And we were just kind of like trying to find our way to the temple. We didn't have like an exact address, and I don't know why we didn't look it up ahead of time or print something out. I mean, there was still like MapQuest and things back then. But for whatever reason, we're just like, no, we can find it. Like, you can see it right from the interstate, which you could. But apparently, like, the neighborhood around the temple is just a gigantic maze. Somehow we ended up being there. But as I'm picturing Beatrix following this character, Leon, down through some neighborhoods, and she's wondering where the heck they're going. That was the area that I was picturing, because I was remembering how the streets around the temple just seemed like it was just like in and out and all over the place. And where the heck is the temple? It's like in the middle of one of those little maze toys where you have the little silver ball and you have to tip the toy back and forth to try to get it through the maze. That's what it felt like we were doing when we were driving there. So that was the neighborhood that I was picturing in my mind. And it's really nice to have Street View on Google Maps, because then I could go back and look at that neighborhood and remind myself of what it actually looked like to make sure it was going to fit what I wanted it to fit in this story. Because I wanted, I'd had the neighborhood where he dropped off the coworker to be kind of where I'm picturing, like Colfax area, South Denver, not a nice area, fairly run down. And so I wanted something to contrast that. And this neighborhood worked for that. So I went ahead and kind of used that neighborhood as where she's going in this area of Littleton. And she, has to park a little bit away so he doesn't see them. And then she sneaks up and is watching them and observes this exchange where she can't really hear what they're saying because she's too far away, but it's clearly a negative interaction, and he's trying to get her to go with him, and she doesn't want to go. She's telling him to leave. Then she tries to leave, and he grabs her and tries to pull her toward him and toward the car. And she's able to get away and runs off, but he's very upset by this. He is angry, drives off fast. She kind of indicates that maybe she's calling for help, and he doesn't know whether she actually is or not. So he runs off and is clearly scared that there may be some sort of consequences to his behavior. And so I feel like that's something I can bring back to the event 2 years ago to make that connection. And then she can start keeping her ears out for others who've had negative reactions with him. Try to figure out what exactly is his deal, because he can carry on through normal life as a regular person. He's not drawing attention. He's not, like that guy that everybody's creeped out by or whatever. Like he seems like a normal, decent person outside of these isolated incidences. So I'm thinking Beatrix is now going to be looking for other out of the ordinary incidences, especially as she eventually will get in contact with the parents and start kind of trying to ingratiate herself with them and get into their lives a bit more and get more information about Arya and who Arya was. So I'm thinking this may cause her to have some doubts about either Arya's character, especially as she gets to know the parents. I think there's going to be some dysfunction maybe in the family, some other factors that she starts to think, this might be something much different than I initially thought it was going to be. And having those two siblings' lives and characteristics and who they are collide a bit more with the parents kind of being in an overarching way tangled up with all of that as well. So that's kind of my impression at this point of where the next couple chapters are going to go. Like I said, I started on chapter 5, and basically so far all I have is it's her check-in with her supervisor. He can kind of, I guess, not quite telepathically because they're souls. I'll have to think of a word for maybe what that connection is. But he can kind of speak, he can make this connection and speak directly to her to see what her progress is. and her supervisor's kind of a micromanager that she doesn't like at all. They don't have the best relationship, but he knows she's very good at what she does, and she puts up with him. I'm kind of thinking too, because this will be a series, and she's going to have a different case that she's assigned each book. But I'm thinking about what are Beatrix's overall goals. Like a ladder she's trying to climb. Is she trying to get to better cases? Does she want to become a supervisor? I haven't really played too much with what this non-human world is like and what is the structure and what is the point. I've kind of semi-intentionally built in some aspects of Beatrix's character of things she does not enjoy about her job, and things that she does. She likes solving the mystery. She likes the investigation aspect of it. But I'm getting a sense from her, which is always kind of funny because it's like she's my character. She's in my head, but she's still like telling me as we go through this what she wants and where she's going or trying to go. So, like, I'm getting a sense with her character that she wants more control over her life and her opportunities. She doesn't necessarily always like the types of cases she's getting assigned, and I think that's going to be partly because of the antagonistic relationship with her supervisor, Cal. Sometimes he intentionally gives her cases that he knows she doesn't like those set in a high school environment. She's not a big fan of high school in general. So I'm kind of keeping that in the back of my mind as well of what I'm going to do with Beatrix over the course of the series and what her goals are and how should I be bringing that in here in this first book. Something to think about. But even though I needed to skip a day on Thursday from just being too physically exhausted to get my brain to work, I made good progress today, which felt nice. Kind of felt like catching up, but I do still plan to get some writing in the morning and check back in after I finish that for the Saturday report to wrap up this episode and get it posted. I am back. It is Saturday evening, and after spending half the morning fighting my sprinkler system and still not ever quite figuring out what's wrong with it, so I will tackle that again sometime tomorrow or Monday. And I may just give up and call someone because it's a terrible sprinkler system. It's been a battle every summer that I've lived in this house, so 3 years running, problems every time I try to get it going. But I finally gave up on working on that, and then went to a book signing for the lovely Bethany Turner, who I have been trying to get in contact with. And, we keep playing email tag basically over extended periods of time. I've been trying to get her on my other show, Right on Four Corners. So this was a nice chance to kind of take a break from the sprinklers, talk to another writer, which always helps me want to actually get some writing done, and pick up her new book, get it signed, and then hopefully later this month, get her on for an interview with that. So other book-related business taken care of, which was nice. And then I did get some writing done after I kind of wrapped up some other stuff, sat down, finished watching the last episode of The Diplomat, which I kind of got sucked into this week. And hopefully season 2 comes out soon, because that was quite the cliffhanger to leave everybody on. But anyway, on to writing, so I quit rambling. Actually, before I sat down to write, I was taking a shower, which is always, when ideas hit you because you have absolutely nothing around that you can record this idea with. But I think I got a fairly solid idea for where this book is ultimately going to go, which is good because that gives me a little bit of a framework to work with. Still not sure on all the details of that, but it was something that was bothering me as I was trying to write, and I think it was making me a little bit more rambly in my writing. So it's good to kind of have an idea of where I'm going, and I'm not gonna get into that right at the moment because it may change and I'm still kind of tossing it around in my mind. But it did come into play a little bit as I sat down to write this afternoon, which I got a little over an hour, maybe like an hour or 15 minutes before I needed to make some food. And I was able to write 1,443 words, which takes my total word count for this book up to 9,489 words since I started it last week. So feeling like I'm getting a good chunk done and like there's some actual hope that I might actually get a first draft done at some point. Hopefully this summer. Well, like I said, we'll kind of see how it goes. So I was finishing chapter 5. I'd said in the last section that I'd started it and kind of left off with Beatrix's supervisor. He pops into her head basically to do a checkup. And this gave me a chance to explore her relationship with Cal a little bit more and dig into why it's not as good as it could be. Because I'd kind of built in this sense over the first 4 chapters, just a little bit more vaguely, which I'll probably have to go back and fix, that she's at a point in her career where she's a bit dissatisfied with how things are going. She's not getting the cases she wants. She's just not liking the surrounding circumstances. She loves being an investigator. She doesn't necessarily want to move up and become a supervisor because that would take her out of what she's doing. But she's not happy with who she's paired with and how the system is working and what she's being asked to take on and all of that. So this conversation with him checking up on her kind of gave me the opportunity to explore that a little bit more. And the direction I went is that Cal is not really a great supervisor. He was one of those who was not good at being an investigator either. He just didn't have a good sense for it, didn't put things together well, kind of lazy on the amount of legwork he would do and would kind of just come to conclusions too early based on assumptions. So, like probably a lot of us have experienced, sometimes those people get promoted or moved into another position just to get them out of where they're at and where they're failing. And so that's kind of what's happened with Cal. He was moved up to be a supervisor with the idea in my head that if he's just kind of keeping an eye on how things go, he's going to do less damage than actually investigating these subjects and making a determination on the ultimate state of their soul. But unfortunately, as Beatrix is experiencing, he's a micromanager. He is very petty, so he takes out his frustration that she kind of basically shows him up a lot because he'll give her the case with an initial assumption of, oh, this person did this or that, or this is a responsible party or whatever. And most of the time he's wrong because he, is just not good at this. And so he holds that against her. He's intentionally giving her assignments that he knows she'll hate. He's called her off of basically her cosmic PTO. She was supposed to be on vacation. He calls her back for this last-second mission. And so they're not in a good place. She kind of despises him and hates working for him. And that's kind of building her overall frustration with the situation and the case. So things about like having to be in a high schooler's body, which is not her favorite or type of person to be investigating. She's even more irritated about it because she's in such an antagonistic situation with her supervisor, Cal. So I think I'm getting a better sense of who the main characters are and how they're playing off of each other, which is giving me a better concept of what I'm going to need to go back and fix over the first 4 chapters to build that up, make it more obvious, because I caught myself doing it again in this chapter 5. I'm explaining more than I should be because I'm working it out in my mind as I go. So what I need to do later when I come back to this for rewrites is break some of that up and build those hints and clues in the earlier chapters. So then once she gets to the point where, she's just loses it with Cal, the reader sees that coming, and then I don't have to explain why she's losing it. We've seen that over the chapters leading up to that boiling point. So that was helpful. I feel like I can use that relationship moving forward more concisely without so much wordiness and play them off of each other a little bit better, because now I'm also getting a sense of what Beatrix's long-term goals are. Like I said, she's not trying to move up, but she wants a little bit more control. She wants to be trusted by her supervisor to handle the more complex cases, to be able to say, like, I really, I've been doing this for centuries. I'm really tired of being in the high schoolers situation, things like that. So that's kind of giving me a little bit of an idea of an overarching storyline for her throughout the series. And still a lot to figure out there, but I'm kind of able to start thinking about it a little bit more. So I also wrapped up the chapter with her in chapter 4, ended with her observing Leon kind of being aggressive with this girl. She doesn't know who the girl is yet. And she heads home to start trying to figure out, okay, what's his history with this girl? What do I not know about him? What did Cal fail to find in the initial overview and file that he gave her? And I'd mentioned earlier kind of the thought of there was probably going to be some repercussion for her being out in the evening without getting it cleared with her parents or, something along that realm. So I decided that I was going to put this mostly in the mom's hand because she's the most unstable and reactive, and use her to give the reader a sense of some of Sage's backstory. And I'm trying to really balance this because I want Sage's character ultimately to be somewhat sympathetic, but not to the point where readers aren't going to like the ending. Because I'm starting to get a sense of how I'm going to end this. I think it's going to be a fine line to walk of helping the reader understand her past and the pressures and conflicts that she's been dealing with that lead to the outcome, but also not to the point of like excusing any of the characters for their behavior. And I think that's going to go with Leon too, like finding that balance of some sympathy, making the character relatable, but not going too far over that then I'm going to have issues at the end. So the mom kind of goes at her as soon as she comes back into the house and starts kind of dragging up other stuff that Beatrix doesn't actually know what she's talking about because she doesn't have a full history of Sage's life. So Beatrix is trying to make guesses in this interaction to lead her to a situation where she can get more answers. And so the mom is kind of verbally attacking her, at one point slaps her, and is saying, just berating her. Look at all these terrible things you're doing. She refers to them as her crimes. And Beatrix doesn't know if she's meaning this literally or figuratively until the mom mentions that all the time that Sage spent with their religious advisor, I don't think I'm going to name a particular religion. So I'm just kind of going with the term pastor, because I think that seems to be one that applies to several religious organizations. So I'm going to leave it a little bit vague there, at least for now. And that kind of gives Beatrix an idea that these may be like legal crimes that the mom's talking about as well, but at least some of what the mom is upset about is crimes against her beliefs that she expects Sage to also share those beliefs. So Beatrix is playing the role of angry teenager and kind of lashing back out at mom, but she's doing it in an intentional way that leads to the mom saying, basically, well, you haven't learned your lesson. I already made you an appointment with the pastor. You're going to see him and you're going to, work through this, change your ways and save your soul until the end of time, basically, until the mom loses control. Because Sage is approaching 18 years old. She's a senior in high school. So there's only so far she can hold on to this control. And she knows that, which I think in my head is making her even more desperate to get Sage in line before she loses what little control she still has over her. So that's kind of where I ended chapter 5 with this looming meeting with the pastor, which is going to happen after school. So there's going to be at least half a chapter, maybe a full chapter with Sage back at school because she's got to now track down Sarah, maybe have another interaction with Ethan. I think I'm going to bring him in maybe a little bit later, because I think I'm going to have him reach out through text a little bit more, just kind of testing the waters, because he's, like I said, a little starstruck with Sage talking to him, but also not bold enough to just step right in and try to be friends or more, because he does know she's dating Kendall. So, and I think giving a chapter back at the school will also give, I need to bring Kendall in more, because I think that's going to be a big part of developing Sage's character, is continuing to see their interactions and how they border on unhealthy, to give that kind of comparison and cause effect of her home life bleeding into her personal relationships as well, and the effects that has on people. So I've got an idea of what the next couple of chapters should look like. I'm starting to get a picture of the end of the book, and where the various characters are going to end up. I don't want to give too much of that away quite yet, because honestly I might change my mind and go with something completely different. We'll just see how it goes. But yeah, things are starting to come together, and I'm making progress. I got in my 5 days this week, so that felt good. Today and yesterday I actually got more writing done than I was expecting, so I'm hoping I can kind of continue that and start really making some progress on this, keeping in mind there's these initial chapters, especially chapters 1 through 4, I think. This one too, because of the explainy part with Cal. But definitely some rewrites that are going to need to happen to shape up these initial chapters, make them less exposition, a little bit more action, and get things going more. So even of that, close to 9,500 words, when I go back through that, that's going to cut a chunk of that out. Which is fine, because I tend to write really long, and I'm learning I need to go back and be more aggressive about cutting what doesn't need to be there, which is nice, which is something I recently talked to Scott Graham for Right on Four Corners, and I'd asked him, because he does a lot of extensive research, and he was saying he gives himself free rein on the first draft. He'll put in all the things that he thinks are interesting and fascinating, and then when he goes back for his rewrites, he takes out all the stuff that he thinks that the readers are not going to be as interested in as him. Because, when you dive into it and you really invest in a topic or a cause or a character as the writer, that world building, you put so much into it, you want to share every last thing with your reader. But a lot of that just doesn't need to be there and can end up being really boring. So I'm going to keep that in mind when I come back to work on these initial chapters and get things cleaned up and a little bit more concise. So wrapping up the week, I'm glad I was able to get so much done, even though I spent 2 solid days on rocks and half a day today arguing with my sprinkler system. But this is helping me be accountable, keep writing, and get stuff figured out. So I will be back next week with more words on the page and hopefully more ideas about where to take this story. I'll see you then. If you want to learn more about my books that are already written, you can find me online at DelShereeGladden.com, and the music for the podcast is by Mon Plaisir.